The steam curled from my mug, carrying the familiar, comforting scent of dark roast. Sunlight, weak and watery for a spring morning, slanted through the kitchen window, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. Clara, my wife of 27 years, hummed softly as she rinsed dishes at the sink. Our son, Leo, had already left for his early lecture at the university. Peace. The kind of deep, settled peace you only earn after decades. Or so I thought. Beatrice, Clara's younger sister, sat opposite me at the scarred oak table. She'd arrived unannounced yesterday, citing a sudden urge for a family visit. Her visits were always slightly off, like a puzzle piece forced into the wrong space. Today, her eyes, sharp and restless, kept flicking between Clara's back and me. Too many glances. Too heavy. The betrayal that was about to unfold would test not just my marriage, but my very identity as a father, unleashing a painful truth that had remained hidden for decades. Quick pause. Where are my story lovers watching from today? Comment below. If these shocking family secrets are hitting different, smash like and subscribe for more Reddit revenge stories that might just change how you see your own family dynamics forever. Another cup, Sam? Clara asked, turning, her smile warm, genuine. The lines around her eyes crinkled, the map of our life together etched there. Please, I nodded, my gaze lingering on her. My Clara. My rock. The mother of my child. Beatrice leaned forward suddenly, her movement jerky, unnatural. Her voice, when it came, wasn't a whisper. It was a serpent sliding across the table, cold and venomous, meant only for my ears. Your son isn't even yours, Samuel. The words didn't register at first. They were just sounds disconnected from meaning. Your son isn't even yours. I blinked. The steam from my coffee seemed to thicken, distorting Clara's figure at the sink. The humming stopped. The dust motes froze mid-dance. The entire kitchen tilted on its axis. What? The words scraped out of my throat, raw and alien. My knuckles were white where I gripped the mug. Beatrice didn't flinch. A small, cruel smile touched her lips. She sat back, folding her arms, her job done. The poison delivered. She watched me, her eyes gleaming with a sick satisfaction. Clara turned, drying her hands on a towel. Everything all right, Sam? You look pale. Beatrice, did you say something? Beatrice's expression shifted instantly, becoming bland, innocent. Just asking Sam if he wanted more coffee, dear. He seems a bit distracted this morning. Distracted? My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Distracted didn't cover it. The world I'd built, brick by loving brick over half a century, had just been dynamited. Leo, my son, the boy whose first steps I'd cheered, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose dreams I'd nurtured. Not mine. The thought was a physical blow, stealing my breath. Clara placed a fresh mug before me, her brow furrowed with concern. Sam, really, you look like you've seen a ghost. Are you feeling unwell? I couldn't look at her. Not yet. The accusation hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating, even though Clara hadn't heard it. Had she? Was Beatrice lying? Why? The questions tumbled over each other, a chaotic avalanche in my mind. Beatrice had always been jealous. Of Clara's stability, of our family, of the quiet contentment she seemed incapable of finding herself. But this? This wasn't just petty jealousy. This was annihilation. I forced my gaze up, meeting Clara's worried eyes. They were the same eyes I'd looked into for decades. Eyes I trusted implicitly. Now doubt, insidious and cold, began to seep into the cracks Beatrice's words had created. Had there ever been a flicker of something hidden? A hesitation when talking about Leo's birth? A story that didn't quite add up? I couldn't pinpoint anything. Not then. But now the seed was planted, watered by malice. I think I need some air, I managed, pushing my chair back. The legs scraped loudly against the floor. Just a headache, coming on strong. Clara reached out, her hand warm on my arm. Do you want me to get you something? Lie down. I flinched, pulled away. The movement was involuntary, a reflex born of sudden, profound suspicion. Hurt flashed across her face, quick and sharp, before concern masked it again. No, no, I mumbled, avoiding her eyes. Just air. I'll be back soon. I walked out of the kitchen, out of the house, into the cool morning air. But the peace was shattered. The sunlight felt harsh, accusing. Every bird call sounded like mockery. Beatrice's whisper echoed in my skull, a relentless drumbeat. Not yours. Not yours. Not yours. The foundation of my life, my identity as a husband, a father, had cracked wide open. And I had no idea how deep the fissure went, or if anything could ever be whole again. The air outside did nothing to clear my head. If anything, the ordinary sounds of the neighborhood, a lawnmower starting, children laughing down the street, felt grotesque, like a soundtrack playing over a disaster movie. I drove aimlessly for hours, the city a blur outside the car window, the poisonous whisper replaying on an endless loop inside. Not yours. The words had claws, tearing at memories I'd cherished, transforming them into potential lies. Eventually, the car brought me home, as if drawn by gravity. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Clara was probably resting, or maybe just giving me space. Beatrice's car was gone. Thank God for small mercies. But the silence wasn't peaceful. It was charged, heavy with unspoken accusations and my own spiraling dread. I couldn't face Clara. Not yet. Not with this monstrous doubt chewing through my gut. Instead, drawn by a compulsion I didn't understand, I found myself climbing the stairs to the attic. It was a place of stored memories, dusty boxes filled with remnants of lives lived. Leo's childhood drawings, Clara's old university textbooks, my father's worn-out tools. And my mother's things. She'd passed away 5 years ago, leaving behind a lifetime of memories packed in boxes. Clara had carefully sorted most of it, but one item remained untouched on a small shelf, her old jewelry box. Not the fancy one she used later, but the simple, wooden one from her youth, chipped and darkened with age. I hadn't opened it since bringing it up here. It felt too personal, too raw. Today, it felt like the only place to look. Why? I couldn't have said. Maybe I was searching for a connection to unconditional love, to a time before doubt poisoned everything. Or maybe deep down, some instinct whispered that answers, painful answers, might be hidden amongst the costume jewelry and faded photographs. I lifted the box. It was surprisingly heavy. Carrying it downstairs, I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Beatrice had unleashed her venom. The wood felt cold beneath my fingers. I lifted the lid. The scent of old wood, faint perfume, and time itself drifted out. Inside, nestled on faded velvet, were brooches, a string of pearls with a broken clasp, a few single earrings, and a small bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. My fingers trembled slightly as I moved the items aside. And then, beneath a folded lace handkerchief, I felt something different. Not jewelry. Something flat and stiff, wrapped in a thin piece of yellowed paper. My heart stuttered. I carefully pulled it out. The paper was brittle. Unfolding it revealed a small, cream-colored card. Typed words leaped out at me. DNA paternity test results. The date at the top made my blood run cold. It was dated just weeks after Leo's birth. 22 years ago. My vision swam. I gripped the edge of the table, the wood digging into my palms. Why? Why would my mother have this? The question screamed in my mind, louder than Beatrice's whisper. Had she known? Had she doubted? Had she tested Leo without telling me? Without telling Clara? With hands that felt numb, detached from my body, I slid the card out of its paper sheath. The results were stark, definitive, printed in cold, black ink. Alleged father, Samuel Henderson. Child, Leo Henderson. Probability of paternity, 0%. Conclusion, excluded. The words didn't just break my world, they atomized it. Excluded. Not a low probability. Not inconclusive. 0. Utterly, completely, scientifically excluded. Leo, my son, the boy I'd held moments after his birth, whose tiny hand had curled around my finger, whose face was the mirror of my own soul, was not mine. The DNA test, hidden for decades by my own mother, proved it. The proof was physical, undeniable. a document colder and more final than Beatrice's malice. A choked sound escaped me, something between a sob and a gasp. I slumped back in the chair, the damning card clutched in my hand. The kitchen, once the heart of our home, became a tomb. The silence was absolute now, filled only by the roaring in my ears and the devastating echo of a truth I could no longer deny. My mother had known. She'd hidden this. Why? The betrayal felt layered, infinite. And Clara? My Clara, what part had she played in this monumental deception? The questions were no longer just seeds of doubt, they were a forest fire, consuming everything. The DNA card felt like a live coal in my pocket. I carried it for hours, pacing the house, the weight of it a constant, burning reminder. Clara watched me, her eyes wide with a fear that mirrored my own turmoil. She knew something catastrophic had happened, but not what. The silence between us stretched thin, taut, vibrating with unspoken terror. Finally, as dusk painted the sky bruised purple, I couldn't bear it anymore. I found her in the living room, sitting rigidly on the edge of the sofa, twisting a handkerchief in her lap. The sight of her, so vulnerable, so scared, almost broke my resolve. But the image of that 0% flashed in my mind. Clara, I said, my voice rough, unfamiliar. I didn't sit. I stood over her, the DNA card suddenly in my hand, held out like an accusation. Explain this. She looked at the card, her face draining of all color. Her eyes widened, not with surprise, but with a dawning, horrified recognition. She didn't ask what it was. She knew. The sight of that knowledge on her face was another knife twist. Where did you get that? She whispered, her voice trembling. Your sister's little visit wasn't just social, Clara. I bit out, the anger I'd been suppressing finally surging. She whispered her poison. And then, I found this. In my mother's jewelry box. Hidden for 22 years. 22 years, Clara. My voice rose, cracking on the last word. Did you know? Did you both know? Was my whole life a lie you two cooked up? Tears spilled down her cheeks, silent and fast. She shook her head violently, her hands flying up as if to ward off my words. No. Samuel, no. Please listen to me. It wasn't like that. Like what? I demanded, the card trembling in my grip. Like you lied to me? Like you let me believe Leo was mine? Like you betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible. He is yours, Samuel, she cried, her voice breaking. In every way that matters. He's your son. But biologically, her voice hitched, a raw sob escaping her. Oh God, I never wanted you to find out like this. Never. The raw pain in her voice gave me pause. It wasn't the guilt of a simple adulterer. It was something deeper, darker. Then what, Clara? Tell me. What is this? Why would my mother have it? Why would you? She took a shuddering breath, wiping futilely at her tears. It wasn't betrayal, Samuel. It was desperation. And love. A terrible, desperate love. She looked down at her hands, clenched tight in her lap. Leo wasn't. He wasn't my biological child either. Not originally. The words hung in the air, shocking me into momentary silence. What? Before you and I, before we even met. I was married before. Very young. To a man named, well, his name doesn't matter. He was volatile. Dangerous. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. I was pregnant. With Leo. But things got bad. Really bad. One night, he came home and raged. There was a fight. He pushed me. Hard. Down the stairs. I stared, frozen. The horror of her words washed over me. I lost the baby, Samuel, she choked out, the tears flowing freely now. Our baby. I was devastated. Broken. And he blamed me. Said I killed his child. He threatened. He said if I ever told anyone, he'd make sure I never had another chance. He vanished shortly after. Left me with nothing but grief and fear. The love was still there. I could see it, feel it emanating from her, mixed with the anguish and regret. But the trust, the easy, unquestioning trust that had been the bedrock of our marriage for nearly 3 decades, that was fractured, maybe beyond repair. The path forward wasn't clear. It was shrouded in the fog of shock and the debris of shattered illusions. One thing was certain. The man who sat in this living room, listening to his wife's devastating confession, was not the same man who had sat down to coffee that morning, blissfully unaware of the fault lines running beneath his world. The healing Clara spoke of felt impossibly distant. Right now, there was only the pain, the confusion, and the daunting task of figuring out how to breathe in this new, unfamiliar landscape. The days that followed were a blur of quiet anguish and awkward avoidance. Clara gave me space, moving through the house like a ghost, her eyes perpetually red-rimmed and watchful. I spent hours in my workshop, the rhythmic sanding of what a poor substitute for the clarity I craved. Leo came home for the weekend, his cheerful energy a stark, painful contrast to the suffocating atmosphere. He sensed it, of course. He asked if everything was all right. I mumbled something about work stress. Clara echoed it. The lie, even a small one, tasted like poison. Every time I looked at him, the shape of his nose, the way he tilted his head when concentrating, I saw Clara's story, the hidden tragedy, the DNA result. He was still my son. But the knowledge was a third presence in the room, heavy and unspoken. The breaking point came unexpectedly. Leo was helping me fix a leaky faucet under the kitchen sink. Water sprayed, he cursed, fumbling with a wrench. I reached in, my hand covering his to guide the tool. For a split second, it was just us, father and son, tackling a household chore. 1,000 such moments flashed through my mind. Teaching him to ride a bike, cheering at his graduation, the fierce pride when he aced his exams. The DNA test, Beatrice's malice, Clara's secrets, none of it mattered in that instant of connection. He was my boy. Always had been. Later that evening, I found Clara sitting on the back porch step, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery streaks. She looked small, fragile, wrapped in a cardigan against the cooling air. I sat down beside her, leaving a careful space. Leo fixed the faucet, I said quietly. She nodded, not looking at me. He's good with his hands. Like you. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the crickets begin their nightly chorus. The weight of the unspoken was immense, but the shared memory of Leo, the simple, everyday reality of him, felt like an anchor. I've been thinking, I began, the words slow, deliberate, about what you said, about the fear, the loss, about why you did it. I took a deep breath. It doesn't excuse the lie, Clara. Not for 27 years. Not keeping me in the dark, letting my mother hold that over us, it hurt. It still hurts. The trust, it's broken. A tear tracked down her cheek. I know. But, I continued, my voice thick. I understand the why now. Not the deceit, but the desperation. The love that made you do something so wrong. You were trying to heal. To build something safe. And Leo, he was the center of that. He is the center. I turned to face her. He's my son, Clara. Biology doesn't change that. It doesn't change the fact that I love him more than my own life. That won't ever change. A sob escaped her, a sound of profound relief mixed with lingering sorrow. Oh, Samuel. The healing, I said, picking up the thread. It's going to take time. A long time. For both of us. We need to figure out how to live with this truth. How to rebuild something. Maybe not what we had. That's gone. But something new. Something honest. I paused. And Beatrice, she can't be part of our lives anymore. Not after this. Her poison, it can't be allowed near us again. Clara nodded fiercely, wiping her eyes. Never. I'll call her tomorrow. She's not welcome here. As if summoned by the mention of her name, my phone buzzed. A text. From Beatrice. Heard you and Clara had a little chat. Hope the truth didn't hurt too much. Told you she wasn't what she seemed. The cold, gloating text was a perfect snapshot of her malice. I showed it to Clara. Her face hardened. Without a word, she took the phone. Her fingers flew across the screen. I saw her type, "You are no longer my sister. You are dead to me. Stay away from my family. Forever." She hit send with a finality that felt like closing a door on a toxic past. A week later, Karma arrived, not with a bang, but with the quiet, inexorable force of consequence. Beatrice's long-suffering husband, tired of her bitterness and constant scheming, finally filed for divorce. He'd uncovered her secret gambling debts, accrued over years of trying to fund a lifestyle she couldn't afford and fueling her resentment. The news came through a mutual acquaintance. Beatrice was alone, facing financial ruin and social isolation, the architect of her own misery. Her attempt to shatter our family had only succeeded in demolishing her own. Clara and I sat on the porch again one evening, watching the fireflies begin their dance in the twilight. Leo was inside, studying. The air between us was still fragile, still healing, but the suffocating weight had lifted. We'd talked more, haltingly, about her past, about my mother, about the fear that had ruled her for so long. It was painful, but necessary. We were starting to navigate the new landscape. He asked today, Clara said softly. Leo. He asked if we were sure we were okay. He said the house felt sad. I looked towards the warm light glowing from the living room window. We will be, I said, reaching out to take Clara's hand. It was tentative, but she didn't pull away. It's going to take time, but we have the truth now. And we have him. That's the foundation we rebuild on. Not secrets, not fear, just love and honesty, one day at a time. She squeezed my hand, a silent promise in the pressure. The path ahead was uncertain, paved with the shards of old lies and the fragile hope of new understanding. The wound was deep, but the poison of Beatrice's whisper had been neutralized by the antidote of truth, however painful. And in the quiet darkness, watching the fireflies blink like tiny, hopeful stars, I knew that while the man I was that morning over coffee was gone, the father I was to Leo remained. That bond, forged in love and shared years, was the unbreakable thread that would guide us through the healing, one fragile step at a time. The world hadn't ended. It had just been irrevocably, painfully remade. And somehow we would learn to live in it. Together. Thank you for spending your time with my story. Feel free to share your thoughts or reactions in the comments. I'd love to hear from you.